next, posted by Sabsco20. I have always been a fan of Slender Man, but of course he isn't real, right? Well, I was with a friend of mine, who we will call Jamie. We always walked around our small town, Colbert. We liked to draw the 8 notes from Slender Man game and post them all around Colbert, the gas station, cemetery, a baseball field that was behind the cemetery, just everywhere. Well, the other night felt different. We were just walking around and kept hearing footsteps in the woods. We passed it off as a raccoon or something, so we continued walking. We got to the cemetery and there was a thick fog everywhere. There was no lake or creek for at least 10 miles. It wasn't humid, nor had it rained in days. Well, again, we just pushed it off as Mother Nature. We continued to walk and kept hearing something following us. When we stopped, the steps stopped, but we continued to the baseball field, which was a little creepy. It was a small field surrounded by woods. Run-down bathrooms that you see at little kids' baseball fields that are just a random square in the middle of everything, with a woman's bathroom on one side and a men's on the other, and a water fountain in the front, but it was creepy looking. We had to pee, and it was the only bathroom for miles, so we went in, and wouldn't you know, the lights wouldn't work. So we done what we needed to do and got out of there. But when we came out, there was a man standing across the field near the wood's edge, but he wasn't there before. He was just standing there motionless. We were intrigued by his lack of awareness of his surroundings when the fog from the cemetery slithered its way into the woods, creating an ominous and eerie feeling. We called out to him to ask if he was okay. He never budged, never returned an answer, never turned his head. We walked up to see what was the matter, and when we got next to him, we asked if he was okay. He looked into my eyes with the most terrified look I've ever seen. I will never forget his eyes. They were dark green, tired, bloodshot, and had black rings around them. He was able to utter 4 words before he collapsed in tears. He took her. His voice was broken and sounded ashamed, like he was to blame. I asked him what happened, and he explained he had witnessed Slender Man himself as a child and had hidden himself from cameras in the wooded areas. He went on and on about the precautions he took to stay away from Slender's hands. But as he grew older, he had brushed it off as an overreactive imagination and forgotten about the incident. He grew up, married his high school sweetheart, and had adopted a little girl named Clarissa, who was 5 at the time of the disappearance. He explained how one day he and his little girl were at the baseball field tossing a ball. He asked her not to wander off and to not move for anyone who called to her, and he reminded her about stranger danger. Then he had her sit down on a bench so he could go to the bathroom. He came back a moment later and she was gone. He heard footsteps descending into the woods. He immediately remembered everything about Slender Man from his childhood and ran after his daughter. He saw the tall man in a black tuxedo walking into the woods with his daughter in hand. The man called out to his daughter to run away from him, but only the tall man turned around. He saw the man had no face. He realized in that moment his worst fear had become reality. The tall man turned back around and disappeared into the woods with Clarissa. The father remembered he was completely numb. He couldn't move. By the time he came to, his daughter and the tall man were gone without a trace. Jamie and I looked at each other in total shock and turned to the woods where we had heard the footsteps following us before. There stood the tall man with no face, watching us, waiting for us. We turned around to tell the man to run, but the man was gone. The grass wasn't even bent or broken where the man had been weeping on his knees. We turned back to where the tall man was standing, but he was closer this time. Jamie and I ran as fast as we could through the cemetery. We looked back every now and then to see if he was following us. Every time we turned to look, he was just a few steps behind us, but only standing as if he had cloned himself, hiding in front of us, waiting for us to run, and then they would step out from behind whatever we passed. We had run back to Jamie's house and locked all the doors and windows, but from what we had read online, nothing will stop him from entering your home if he wants to get in. So this might be my last post. It's been 2 days and I haven't slept. I keep hearing strange noises in the house and I'm scared. If I'm going out on my own terms, not as another unexplainable disappearance. We'll post later for updates. It wasn't my mother's voice. Posted by Omega Weapon. When I was 5, I started to hear my mom call me from a different room every now and again. I'd go there, but the room would be empty. As I turned to leave, she'd jump out at me shrieking and she'd tear and bite at my face. My real mother would come running in because of my screams, but she couldn't console me. I didn't know who was who. Generally, I'd pass out or have a heart attack, as I call it. My heart would hurt like a stitch and I wouldn't be able to breathe for a spell. This happened to me until my early teens. The nights were the worst. It's as though things were escalating. More of her friends were moving in, or so it seemed. I couldn't stay awake till dawn anymore. I had school and I could barely make it awake past 11 p.m. most of the time. I'd wake up at night to roosters crowing in someone's backyard somewhere. After each crow, I'd hear voices outside. And the ones in the kitchen chant something in some kind of orchestrated unison. It gave me chills, but I couldn't do anything. My parents were getting sick of me waking up several times a night, so I just sat there listening. My mother wouldn't check on me anymore as she knew I'd freak out thinking it was her double. So I heard my dad get up from time to time. The voices would stop then. By far, though, when they chanted enough, there'd be that murmuring sound again. Then they'd say, "Ijit, Ijit." Excitedly, "She's here, she's here." She'd walk into my room and just stand there staring at me while they chanted. Eventually she'd attack me, crawling and biting at my face. I'd be paralyzed and feel like I couldn't breathe, but it would all of a sudden stop when my dad came in. It didn't happen every night, but most nights. I had scans done, no signs of anything, just an overactive imagination, they'd say. Eventually, she started appearing during the day as a kind of blur in the dark part of a room, always chanting something incoherent, but I'd hear my name or my mother's pop up from time to time. Not a dark room as such, but the darker part, where the light isn't strongest. Every room has a slightly darker side. I went to a therapist who told me I had to approach it. It was a repressed trauma or some shit. When I tried to approach it, my body would slowly paralyze. I'd get a severe ring in my ear, and I felt heavier the closer I got. Never more than 8 or 9 feet away. When I was 7, though, I was visiting my aunt in the hospital. She had a friend with her at the time, and I greeted them both. Her friend squeezed my cheeks gently. The evil hallucination was chanting always as usual. I was sort of used to it by now. What my aunt's friend did next, though, shocked me. She said, "Is that here?" and looked directly at me. I said yes, and she told me to sit tight. She went up to my hallucination and said, "Sacre busik vilkaiwe." Shut your mouth, bitch. And some other words I couldn't understand. Then she chased it out. She said she'd never bother me again if I learned some words and wore some necklace type thing she made for me. After that, I didn't see the hallucination for a few days, but I heard her. Always beyond the wall of any room I was in. It was as though she was somehow stopped from being in the same room with me. My aunt died, and in my grief I lost the necklace. She came back with a vengeance after that. The police arrested my parents and I am freaking out. Posted by N.S. Lewis. Have you ever heard a rumor about yourself that finally made its way back to you after years of circulation, and you realize everyone bought into it and accepted it 100% as fact, even though you know it's a complete lie. That's what happened to me, but way worse. People aren't just saying that I sucked a dick or whatever, they're saying that I'm somebody else. And you know what? I'm not sure that they're wrong anymore. Maybe I am somebody else. One morning, a few weeks back, I was in the kitchen eating my Cheerios, screwing around on my phone, and there was this loud knock on the front door. This is the police. I just shit my pants, you know? I had a joint all rolled up in my backpack on the stool right next to me, but I thought, there's no way they're coming for me for a joint. That would be nuts. Open the door. Mom was up in the shower and Dad had already left for work. They kept banging on the door. I was scared as hell, but I didn't see that I had much of a choice. I got up and peeked through the side window there by the door, and sure enough, it was cops. 4 of them. 4 cops banging away at the door. I took a deep breath and opened it. "Calvin Dunlap?" said one of the cops, a big massive dude that looked like he could crush me with one hand, the hand that was resting on his gun holster. "Step outside. You're okay now. Is Louise Brown inside?" Mom's taking a shower. I'm not Kevin Dunlap. I'm Nick Brown. Louis is my mom." This threw the big guy for a loop. He turned and looked at his buddies. Then a lady cop spoke up. She looked nice. Not nice enough for me to trust her, but nice. "I don't know what they did to you, Calvin, but you're safe now," she said. "Come with me. Your parents are waiting at the station." I started to get a little dizzy. Dad's at work. Mom's in the shower. What is this? Why are you guys here? I heard one of the guys in the back mutter, "Jesus," he said. He thinks they're his parents. Big guy clears his throat. "Step outside, son. We need to get in there and apprehend Louis Brown." It was a struggle to think at all, but I thought back to all those cop shows in the movies and whatnot. "You guys got a warrant?" One of the guys from the back thrust his hand forward, and there was a piece of paper there. I didn't know what the hell it said, but I figured it was a warrant. I stepped outside. "She's upstairs," I said. "She's probably, naked, so be careful." Lady cop took me gently by the arm and walked me down the steps and to one of the cop cars. I turned my head and saw the rest of them go inside. "Am I in trouble?" I asked. "You're safe now, Calvin," she said. I wonder who the hell Calvin was and why the hell they kept calling me that. Why the hell are they arresting my mom? "Get in," the cop said, holding the back door open. Then, just like in the movies, "Watch your head." What was I supposed to do? I got in and we drove off. "You're not hurt or anything, right?" "Nah," I said, just, confused. "When we get to the station, you can see your parents briefly, but then we have a lot of questions for you." "I'm sorry. I'm sure it's very painful and scary for you, but we have to get your version of the events." She was right that it was scary. We got to the station, and there, standing by the front door, were 2 people, a man and a woman. They were crying. I'd never seen them before in my life. The lady cop opened the door and said, "It's all right. You can go to them." I stood up, but I didn't go to them. They came running over to me, and both of them wrapped me in this wicked bear hug. "Calvin," they said, over and over again, sobbing. I guess they thought I was this Calvin character too, but I wasn't. I was Nick. It was hard to breathe in that hug, but I finally choked out some words. "Who are you guys?" They pulled away and looked at me in a sort of shock. "It's Mom," said the man, "and Dad." He gave a cop a questioning look. He seems to be confused at the moment," she said. "That's why it's imperative that we get him inside and keep the investigation rolling. We'll have him back as soon as we can, Mrs. and Mr. Dunlap." She took my arm again, and we started walking down the pathway to the front door. "Wait," cried this Mr. Dunlap. "1 second." He dug in his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. He opened it up and held it out for me, stepping forward. Calvin, that's us. Behind a little shield of plastic, there was a picture of a guy with a little kid sitting on his lap. The kid was maybe, 5 years old. Sure, he maybe looked a little like I did at that age, but the picture was small, and it didn't blow me away or anything, and the intense look in the stranger's face was starting to creep me out. Oh yeah, I said, cool. Well, I better be getting inside now, right, officer? We were in that room for hours. It was hell. I cried, I puked, I pulled a clump out of my own hair. They asked me if my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Brown they called them, ever hurt me. Of course not. They asked if I remembered anything about the day of the kidnapping. What the hell are you guys talking about? What kidnapping? They asked if I ever tried to contact anybody for help. Help from what? On and on. They were convinced I was this kid, Kevin Dunlap, but I wasn't. Look, I said at the end of my rope, you guys screwed up big time. Can I go home now, or school, or anywhere but here? Do you want to see your parents for a minute? Asked the detective, some dude with a ridiculous mustache. Yeah, I said, feeling this relief for the first time that day. Wait, no, I want to see my mom and dad, my real mom and dad, not those two freaks that hugged me before. Mustache sighed. Those are your real parents, Calvin. Look, hold on. He turned to the mirror. I knew, again from cop shows, this was a trick mirror. Jerry, bring the laptop from in there, yeah? A few minutes later, this guy Jerry came in with the laptop and set it in front of Mustache. Mustache screwed around for a bit and then flipped the computer around so I could see it. Take a look, he said. Scroll through the pictures. There were hundreds of them. Me as a baby, me as a toddler, me as a little kid, and so on. I recognized some of the pictures. My parents had showed them to me at various times. Some of them even were printed and hanging on our walls. But others, well, there were a lot of them where I was with those people who had hugged me. The people claiming to be Calvin's parents. The people claiming that I was Calvin. That's when I puked. I'll tell you what they told me. 10 years ago, when I was 5 years old, Lois and Andrew Brown kidnapped me. Nobody knows why or how. They moved us all from Florida to a little town in Maine. They had birth certificates and all that shit. A social security card. So they moved us to Maine. Enrolled me in a school, got jobs, all that. And meanwhile, my real parents were going out of their minds, calling the FBI, stapling posters to telephone poles. Apparently I was even on a milk carton at one point. They'd just woken up one morning and I was gone. The thing is, I don't remember it that way. I hardly remember anything from when I was that age, but I definitely don't remember Mr. and Mrs. Dunlap. I remember my parents, Lois and Andrew Brown. Vague globs of memory, sure, but I do remember them. I do remember that we lived in Florida, and then we moved to Maine. The cops can't explain any of that. They say I must have been brainwashed. They didn't use that word, but it was what they meant. But I don't think you can just go in and change somebody's memories. It was more than memories. It's a feeling. I'm living with them now, Mr. and Mrs. Dunlap, back in Florida. I begged them, somebody, anybody, to just let me stay in Maine where all my friends are. Hell, I'm almost done with high school, and now I have to haul off and start all over again. I haven't seen the Browns, the people that I still feel are my real parents, since that morning this all started. Like I say, it's a feeling more than anything. Something is off with the Dunlaps. Most of the time, they don't do shit. They just sit there staring at me, not saying anything. They make me sit at the dinner table and eat dinner with them, but they don't say anything. They just chew in silence. Then one of them will randomly come out with something over the top. How was your day today, son? Just like way over enthusiastic, you know? And I'll just say something like, well, it was terrible. I'm really scared. I don't know what's going on. And they'll say, isn't that something? And go back to eating in silence. I don't know. Maybe they got screwed up by the whole thing, but it just doesn't feel right. Lois and Andrew, they could be assholes, but they felt like my parents. Now they're locked up somewhere I don't even know where. Another thing that's really messing with my head is that there's no media coverage of this. Not in Maine, not in Florida, not anywhere. I mean, I'm not trying to come off as important here, but you'd think you'd hear something about this, right? It's crazy fucking story. I asked the Dunlaps about this. They said they had went through the media circus when I went missing and didn't want to go through it once again. So maybe it's not weird after all. Maybe I've seen too many movies where the story always gets out to the press. But it sure seems like I would have seen something. Like, what about my friends back in Maine? Wouldn't they be talking about this? Speaking of my friends, I haven't been able to talk to them since the horror show kicked into gear. They all unfriended me, and they're not answering my text. Corey is the only one I ever heard back from. After sending him thousands of texts, he wrote back, "I'm not supposed to talk to you, Calvin. And after what you did, I don't want to talk to you, Calvin." What? After what I did? I sent another million texts to Corey after that. What did you hear? I don't think you heard the real story. Come on, man, tell me what you know, etc. So that's where I'm at. I'm freaked right the hell out. I don't know what's real. I don't know what I want to be real. As if I had a choice. I don't know what I can do. I'm not even sure who I am. If anybody has any ideas, would you help me sort this out, please? I'm begging you. Tell me what to do.